So thank you everybody for joining us tonight for how New Yorkers can be good animal neighbors. I think this is a really important topic. I know we're going to be addressing some issues that I myself have questioned and been like, I don't know what to do in these situations. So I'm glad that we're going to be addressing it. It's also a really broad topic. It's, each of the subtopics that we're going to be discussing tonight could be their own presentation. We're going to be talking about companion animals, dogs, cats. We're also going to be talking about wildlife and different kinds of wildlife and what to do in certain situations. We're going to be discussing animal cruelty. So it's a lot to pack into an hour. And again, each one could have their own presentation. But the idea tonight was to give a sense of what ordinary New Yorkers, all of us walking around the city, what we can do when we come across an animal that we think is in need. And in order to do that, we're going to have several representatives from ACC. I'm very excited because it is a broad topic that we have people from a variety of departments represented. Unfortunately, I just heard Robin, who was going to join us, is out sick today. So unfortunately, she cannot join us, but we are very fortunate to have Sarah Hollers, our community cats coordinator, Dr. Sasha Nelson, our lead veterinarian and also wildlife rehabilitator, and Jen Snow, who is our field supervisor. And I'm going to let them come on and introduce themselves. I am pressing too many buttons.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm the community cat coordinator. I grew up in southeastern Oregon, and I moved to New York to pursue a painting degree, and then fell in love with community cats doing TNR. So then I was lucky enough to be able to start working at the ACC doing community cat work and advocating for these really amazing creatures.
Thanks. Dr. Nelson, Jen, you guys want to join?
Hi, I am Dr. Sasha Nelson. I am the lead veterinarian at the Manhattan Shelter, as Alex mentioned. I have also been working with wildlife for pretty much as long as I've been a veterinarian. I spent a long time working with the Wild Bird Fund, going there several times a week and consulting on cases and doing surgeries. And through that, I also became a wildlife rehabilitator. So that's me.
So hi, I'm Jen Snow. I have over 10 years of experience working in the field and humane welfare, animals and rescue. Prior to ACC, I worked in law enforcement in regards to animals. So I did cruelty investigations and specialized with equine, have specialized training with that, have a background in mental health issues and training and dealing with those types of things. And at ACC, I came here 2 years ago working in the behavior department because I love animal behavior. And then I came in and began being the field supervisor. So field I took over and then running the cruelty department and all of animal rescue stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, it's a great panel we have tonight representing and a lot of expertise. So I'm very excited you guys are all here tonight. Thank you for joining. And again, thank you to everybody. I think this topic is really important. Before we get into it and have all these panelists discuss everything, we are going to just do a brief overview of ACC for those of you who don't know. And I realized I don't think I introduced myself, so I'll just say that I am Alex Silver. I am the Community Outreach and Engagement Manager here at ACC, and I'm really excited about this new series of webinars that we're doing. So let's get going with the next slide. What is Animal Care Centers of New York City? Well, we're an open admissions animal shelter. That means we are taking in any homeless animal that comes through our doors. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter if they're healthy or sick. It doesn't matter their behavior. It doesn't matter their species. So we're unique in that respect, in that we are taking all these animals in. And we are a nonprofit organization, but we're contracted by the city of New York. So we're a 501c3 with a city contract through the health department. But we take in, it's about 25,000 animals a year. The animals that are pictured here, cats, dogs, rabbits, and guinea pigs, are the animals that you can adopt from ACC. And that leads to the second bullet point. We're an adoption center. We're a great place to find a pet. We recently did a webinar all about adoption, so if you're interested, I encourage you to check out that recording. The third bullet point is probably one people don't think of as often, but is super important to what we do at ACC, which is that we're a community resource. And a lot of what we do is helping people keep their pets, helping animals that are already out in the community. Jen's in the field team. She's working with animals all across the 5 boroughs. So it's broader than bringing animals through our doors. A lot of the work we do is out in the neighborhood. And our mission is to end animal homelessness in New York City. So having all of you here, presumably wonderful fellow animal lovers who are concerned about how to be good neighbors to animals in the city, is really wonderful, because we can't do what we want to do, which is help more animals, without other New Yorkers helping animals. This is just an idea of what open admissions looks like in New York City to give you a sense. And, Jen, you can tell me, I'm sure I'm leaving off some of like your favorites. I bet there are a lot more here that we're not even including. But open admissions, really, you never know what's going to come through your door.
Oh, you put my little monkey in there.
I did. I added that after you sent the slides. I was like, well, we'll have to include that. Did you meet the monkey?
There's 2 of them. I didn't meet this one, but the other one was some sort of spider angry monkey thing. We do get everything. Like that wallaby is at the Bronx Zoo and their animal encounter exhibit. The tiger is from long ago, but we literally get everything. Hopefully
Yeah.
not like lions, tigers, and bears anymore.
We don't have a slide tonight. Sorry to disappoint everybody, like what to do if you see, a tiger in New York City. Call 911, I guess would be the right answer. But we're gonna be addressing more common animals. But again, this is just to give you an idea of the fact that we never know what's going to come through our doors, and we do see it all. And with that, we're going to go to the first topic. Now, I think Robin was going to walk us through this, but I will do a little bit of it. Please, panelists, pipe in if I leave anything out or get anything wrong. But we wanted to start with pets in your neighborhood, because when we're talking about being good animal neighbors, it's also, that includes owned animals and the animal guardians who are caring for them. So what can we do to connect people with resources they may need? Because there are a lot of resources out there. So right now, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We just wanted to start off with sharing the COVID hotline, because if anyone knows anyone who's affected right now by COVID and has pets, they can call this number. It's a collaboration. You can see a lot of different organizations involved. I think it's active through September, but it is still active. So again, if you know anybody who needs support, please have them call. We also encourage people to have a plan for their pet, in other times, in regular circumstances. You don't need to wait for this. You can make a plan right now. And one way to be a good neighbor is to see if you can be a temporary foster for your neighbor's pets. Or someone needs help caring for their animals, maybe you can offer to watch them and take care of them. So just starting off with that slide, given where we are in the world. We also have general resources at ACC that everybody is welcome to share, and we encourage you to share, if you're comfortable doing so, with people in your community. You see our resource flyer here. This is from our surrender prevention program. We are constantly helping people, whether it's a tenant advocacy issue or they need animal behavior assistance, maybe they need pet food, maybe they need subsidized vet care that we can try to hook them up with. So there's a lot of resources that our team might be able to connect people with. So if you know someone who's struggling, please encourage them to contact us. And on this flyer, you can see it says call us or give us shoot us an email. Then there's a whole slew of behavior flyers that we have. You see 2 of them here. I guess this is a delicate situation, how you might want to approach a neighbor who you might notice that could use the help. But if you have a good relationship with someone and you feel like you want to share the behavior flyers, those are on our website. We encourage you to do that. And another thing that we encourage everybody in New York to do, and would help, hope that you spread the word, is get their dogs licensed and get all their pets microchipped. And you can apply for and renew a dog license on the health department's website. Here you see a cat being checked for a microchip. They are super important. Every animal that comes into ACC is going to be checked for a microchip, and hopefully we can reunite animals with their families. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Would you be able to take the lost stray animals? I know now Sarah's a cat person, but we're tasking her with talking about dogs as well.
So let's focus on dogs first. If you find a lost dog, please report it. It's really important because you never know who's missing that animal. The ACC has a database for listing lost and found animals. So what happens is people can list those animals on that website even if you don't bring the animal in. And then if an animal comes in, they go through that website, and if they can match that dog with that person who's missing the animal, they can possibly reunite them. There's also the Lost Pets Pet NYC that you can text for tips and help, which is a really nice, useful way to do that. And you don't have to the nice thing about both of these is you don't have to bring the animal in to report it. You can report a lost or found animal and you can reunite outside of the shelter. So what if you find a stray dog? First, if the animal is acting threatening or dangerous, please put yourself first and do not approach that animal. It's really important that you care for yourself and you keep yourself safe, because if you can't call 911 and that animal needs help, then nobody can help that animal, right? So I would definitely call 911 if you feel uncomfortable with the animal and you don't think it's safe to handle them. Don't try to physically restrain the animal. If it appears sick or injured, you can also call 311, but don't make physical contact with that dog unless you think it's okay. Does the dog have ID? The New York City dog license tag is a good way to trace a dog to its owner. Plus, it says plug a number into the NYC dog e-locator. I've never used that, but Robin, who I think was going to talk, she's from Client Care. I think they use that quite often. You can also bring a dog to most veterinary hospitals, and they'll scan it for a microchip, and we can also scan it. And that's a really nice way to reunite a dog without having to bring it to a shelter. I would really recommend hanging flyers up, talking to neighbors, using Nextdoor. Often just talking to neighbors is all it takes. So if you don't find an ID and you can't find the person, you can keep the dog in your home and register them on the ACC's website, and then you can fall madly in love with that dog and just keep it if you don't find the owner. And then you can, if you just, you can't find the owner, you don't want to keep the dog, you can make an appointment to bring the dog in, and maybe you could foster the dog and help us find a home for it. There are lots of options. Definitely post flyers in the neighborhood and on Facebook and on other pages, and just, again, talk to your neighbors. So that was dogs. What if you find a stray cat? That's a whole different ballgame, because cats do live outside. They have lived outside for 10,000 years. Kitty litter wasn't invented until 1940, so everybody lived outside before then. So it's pretty normal for cats to be found outside. A lot of the times people think they're finding a stray cat when it's actually their neighbor's indoor-outdoor cat, or it's a cat that just doesn't want to be inside 24/7 and really needs to go for a walk sometimes. So when you find a cat, if it's healthy and nothing's wrong with it, and you're just really worried about it, I would definitely talk to your neighbors before you do anything. It's really important to observe a cat in this situation and not act in the moment, because you could be potentially taking somebody's pet, and that's the last thing any of us want to do, because we all care about each other. We all understand the love of an animal, and we would never want to do that to someone. If the animal doesn't look well, if the cat looks sick or injured, or something seems wrong, don't try to handle that animal unless you feel okay, and then definitely try to call for help. So if it seems really, really scary, like this animal is super acting not normal, like it's coming after you, it's trying to coming towards people in an aggressive way, it seems really possibly like something like, I don't know how to, each situation is different, but if you feel scared because this animal is acting in an unpredictable way, I would call 911 immediately. Do not try to touch the cat. Do not try to restrain it. You can stay a distance away. If the cat's just sick or injured and it's not you don't feel like it's coming after you, it's not going to attack you, you just feel like you don't know what to do, you can definitely call us, or if it's after hours, you can call 311 and we can advise you on what to do. So community cats do have multiple caretakers. So you may see a cat that approaches you for food. It does that because it's used to getting food from people who it approaches. So just because a cat's really, really social and coming up to you and meowing doesn't mean it actually needs your help. It's just panhandling. It's just asking you for food because that's how it's worked in the past. It expects that to work right now. So removing that cat probably isn't in its best interest unless you want to keep that cat forever. But in that situation, I would definitely ask around. The caretakers probably can give you advice on the cat and tell you about the cat. And maybe you can even adopt it from a caretaker if that is what you want to do. But I would definitely ask, because there's nothing worse for a caretaker than not knowing what happened to their cat. And if somebody takes a cat home with them thinking they're doing the best thing, you can really put somebody else in a really horrible position where they're just worried about that cat for weeks and weeks and they'll never find out what happened, that it's okay. So you can check for ID on cats. If you do see a cat in your neighborhood and you think that cat might have an owner, you can make a paper collar you put it around their neck and you have your contact information so the caretaker can reach out to you. And then if you need help or advice, because every situation is unique, you can definitely reach out to Community Cats and we'll help you, walk you through any situation you're in. Because everything I'm saying now, like, it makes sense, it sounds okay, and then you get a weird situation and you're like, I don't know. So we're always there for you if you need any advice or help. So if you find kittens, so this is kitten season right now, never separate a kitten from their mom. The mom is always the best outcome for them. It's the only way, the only way most kittens will survive is if they stay with their mom. And you want to monitor from a safe distance. So if it's like a little tiny kitten, you want to leave it there. If you don't know if mom's coming back, you can sprinkle a flower around the area because you can see the footprints of the cat if it comes back. And then you can stay a safe distance away. If you're just standing there staring at the kitten from like 10 feet away, that mom cat's not going to come back for it. So that being said, if the mom doesn't come back, there's some really important things you need to do to safely care for a neonate kitten. You want to make sure it has a heat source. You never give a kitten cow's milk. We have a lot of tips and tricks or links to places that have tips and tricks on our website. I would recommend the National Kitten Coalition and the Kitten Lady. You can just Google those and you can find out how to safely care for a neonate you found, and then you can reach out to us and we can help you with that kitten. Or you can reach out to any rescue group in the area, and most of the time they're going to be able to find somebody to help you with that kitten. If the kittens are a little older, I would definitely consider reaching out. Like if they're under 8 weeks, you still think they are in danger, I would reach out to other rescue groups. You can reach out to us and we can walk you through different scenarios on helping those kittens. I would highly recommend you become TNR-Certified, which means trap, neuter, return. And it is how you get, it's how New York will solve our community cat problem. And we're already doing a great job. The ASPCA does free spay neuter for rescuers, which is anybody who's become TNR-Certified. And it's really nice to be able to help the cats in your community. I did all the cats on my block, and I met a lot of neighbors doing it. It's a really neat way to feel involved in your community. And it just makes you feel like you have a little bit more control over the situation. And it definitely improves neighbor relationships, because if you're caring for cats and the neighbors are irritated about that, getting the cats fixed and vaccinated it's a game changer, and it's really going to improve everything. And it's going to keep the cats safer, because if your neighbors are happy with them and that means the cats are going to be safe. They're going to be protected by those neighbors too, instead of grumpy neighbors who are irritated. So there are several organizations that offer TNR workshops. You can Google it online, or you can reach out to us. I really like the Neighborhood Cats TNR web training because they're doing it online right now. There's one coming up in October. So I think that those are really good options to be, for you to help those cats in your area the best way that, like in a way that's helpful for them and not just us deciding what they want. If you do bring an animal to the ACC, the more info, the better. So really figure out, like, write down where you found this animal. Why did you pick it up? How did it act when you approached it? Were there any other cats in the area? Just anything you can give us about the finding circumstances will help us better understand the situation, number one, and help us reunite that cat with a caretaker if there was one, or an owner, if maybe the cat got out by accident and was just on the loose. And if you lose a cat too, please don't give up, because it can be 3 months before you find a cat. Cats are very smart and they'll make things work, but if you just keep looking for your cat, if you lose it, that's really important to remember. Because I found a cat when I was doing TNR. We scanned it for a microchip. The people that had lost that cat had been missing the cat for 3 months. He just escaped in the middle of the night when they came home one day, and he was only 2 blocks away from their house, and they still never found him, even though they walked around the neighborhood all the time. It was only thanks to a caretaker who noticed that he was just a little different, that they were able to reunite that cat with the owner. So if you are an owner missing a cat, I would definitely go on the website. If it's a community cat, there are different ways to look for a community cat than there are for a house cat. So I would go Google missing community cat. The Community Cat podcast has really good resources for that. And if it's a house cat, I think several websites have advice on how to find a missing house cat.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for talking about dogs too. I mean, I think we can tell you're, a little biased towards the cats, but that's all good. We are, just a reminder to people, we are going to have a Q&A. Hopefully we'll have time at the end. And if you have any questions about any of these topics that come up, we still have more to discuss. But if you have any thoughts, please put them in the Q&A box, and hopefully we will get to them at the end. I'm going to catch up now to the wildlife slides and hand it over to Dr. Nelson.
Okay, so wildlife, I guess you could kind of consider community cats to be a subset of wildlife. We have lots and lots of wild animals living in New York City, like this wonderful hawk on this picture, to squirrels and all sorts of birds, raccoons, opossums, the usual, plus some occasional coyotes that find their way in, and whatever else. I think just like what Sarah was saying about community cats, they know what they're doing outside. They're pretty comfortable getting around their world. They know what's safe and what's not safe. And so for the most part, they're just going about their business, being totally healthy. So most of the time, if you see a wild animal, it's not going to need your assistance. Some cases that you might be tempted to intervene would be if you find a baby animal that's unattended, like a squirrel or a young bird that looks like it doesn't know what it's doing, or opossums or whatever else. And most of the time, if you see a baby animal, mom is nearby. With animals like rabbits, mom actually only comes to nurse the babies and check on them twice a day for 5 minutes at a time. So most of the time those baby rabbits are unattended, and that's totally normal. Similarly with fledgling birds, which we'll get to more in a couple of slides, and I've got some pictures, but fledgling birds look kind of dumb and they look like they don't know what they're doing in the world, but that's actually part of their growth process. So in these cases, you can kind of just observe from a distance and figure out whether this animal is doing fine and maybe just a little younger than you've seen before, or whether it's actually injured. I just want to harp a little bit more on that second line. See, if you see a baby animal, mom's probably nearby. This is a wonderful picture of a mama squirrel who's carrying her squirrel pups up a tree. I'm pretty sure that in this situation, the tree that the squirrel nest was in was downed by something, and the mama actually came picked up each of her babies and carried them down the tree and up to her new nest. So, just like with neonatal kittens, their best chance is with mom. If we take them into the care of a rehabber and we try to do our best caring for them, we're going to lose a significant portion of them. And they would have their best chance if they were in that natural environment with mom stimulating them appropriately, feeding them the correct food, nutritionally, everything is, as it should be, and the environment is perfect. So let's just leave them be for a little while. Something that you can often do with either squirrels or birds is make a fake nest and put the babies in it, and then either affix that to a nearby tree that's a little bit off the ground so that, like random other animals or small children won't come across them and try to pick them up. Or you can actually just leave it on the ground next to the tree. Or you can even take like a little container and make a nest out of it, like a takeout container, and then zip tie that to a fence somewhere in the air. And often if it's not a squirrel that, has legs and a mouth that can carry babies, birds will actually come to this nest and keep on taking care of their babies from the nest that you've made. So that's a nice way to help in the situation without actually taking the animals into your care. Now, if you do find an animal that's injured, so for example, there's blood, or you can see that a leg is sticking out in the wrong direction, or it just looks like it's not mentally with it. One thing you can do if you're not comfortable touching it is call 311. And if you can also find a rehabber on the Department of Environmental Conservation. On their website, there's actually a rehabber listing of all the people who are certified in the state, and you can search by different counties and by different type of animal that they take. So you can get contact information that way. Like I said before, I am a rehabber, and so I've actually gotten a fair number of emails and phone calls over the years. I don't rehab from my home. I just work with organizations like ACC and like Wild Bird Fund, but it is so rewarding to field these calls and be able to say, okay, this is what you need to do, send me some photos. Let's see if this animal actually needs help, or maybe it's just fine. And so it's nice to contact somebody before you've actually removed the animal from the environment. The last point there, that we don't pick up healthy wild animals. So our job as ACC and the rehabber network throughout the state is to help animals that are actually injured to recover and then get back out to the world. We're not a relocation service. Unfortunately, if you find an opossum who's just annoying and in a place that is not perfect for your garbage, like your trash cans, or raccoons who are just figuring out how to open locks and go through things. That's what raccoons and opossums do, and that's kind of the penalty we pay for living in the real world. Unfortunately, we can't just pick that animal up and move it somewhere else. First of all, it's not fair to the animal because that animal has, family and a nest somewhere and its favorite food sources. And if you just pick it up and drop it somewhere else, it might not be able to find those things. It's not going to be thriving. And also it's it's just not appropriate. That's not the way we should be acting in this world. So, but we are here to help you with wild animals that do need help. If you do find so here's some more on raccoons. Raccoons are around during the day. They tend to hide during the day, but sometimes you will see them outside. And that doesn't mean that they're rabid just by being outside. So that's normal. So you can just kind of watch them from a distance. Now, you probably know that pretty much any mammal can carry rabies, and that can be pretty scary. So if you see a raccoon or a fox that's in the wrong place, you don't want to go and pick it up right away. You definitely do want to call 311 and have somebody who is licensed come out and get that animal. The last thing we want is for you to get bitten or scratched, because unfortunately, if that happens and the animal ends up in our care, the Department of Health is going to request that we test the animal for rabies. which unfortunately was fatal for the animal. So because the only rabies test that we have, that anybody has, is a piece of brain tissue. So we really, really don't want to do that. We'd much rather that animal be out there happy in the world. And so if you do need to interact with a raccoon, it's really important to have no contact with it. So wear gloves, have a big towel, have a big carrier that you transfer it into without actually touching it. But that being said, that rabies warning aside, most raccoons and most animals in the city are not rabid. We have a very low population or incidence of rabies. And so you can feel pretty safe that if you do see an animal, most of the time it's going to be fine.
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah.
We, as field services with raccoons, we definitely don't recommend like touching a raccoon at any point in time. Like Dr. Nelson can probably like say in veterinary terms, like kind of like what to look for if they are sick, like the typical, like rabies things that we hear about. The typical rabies things that we, symptoms that we see, which we can't, like Dr. Nelson said, we can't confirm if something has rabies or not. It might have distemper or something else, and they share the same symptoms. But, if an animal is walking in circles, that's something that is commonly seen. That means there's some sort of brain dysfunction going on. If they're laying on their sides, that, just laying flat out in your yard on its side, panting, heaving, just laying there, that's not normal behavior for them to just lay out in the open. So those are like two typical things that we'll see. Or if something has not moved in a very long time, we'll have people call and say, a lot of people have basement steps, and at the bottom of your basement steps, it's like a little dark nook area to your basement door. And you'll wake up, you'll go to take the trash down or out or whatever, and there'll be a raccoon huddled up in the corner sleeping, and they're like, there's something wrong. And it's like, no, it's just sleeping. But if it's there tomorrow, like 12, 24 hours later, then something might be wrong with it that it hasn't moved. But usually they'll mosey on out. If you find like a raccoon that's like behind your trash cans, just curled up in a corner, usually they're just sleeping off whatever they just ate out of your trash, and they will move on. Or if you find a raccoon like in your trash can, or a possum or something, there is no reason to freak out and be scared. The best thing you can do is just walk up to your trash can, point it towards the street, kick it over, and run back inside. And they and they will just run off and go wherever they're going to go. They're not going to come after you. These animals typically, like, their instinct is not to come at you. Their instinct is to flee and get away from you. So they're more scared of you than you are of them. So I just wanted to throw that in there too. Just a couple of things to look for. I saw a horde of raccoons last night. They were just all walking door to door to everyone's trash cans, and I was like, "Oh, they're so fluffy and healthy. This is great." But if they were laid out in the street heaving for air, and like that's something different. So I know we have a lot of wildlife in New York, and New Yorkers aren't used to seeing wildlife. So when you see wildlife, a lot of people think something's wrong, but really nothing's wrong. They just live here with us, and we're just not used to seeing them all the time.
Yeah, coexistence is key. And you see on this the picture from Wildlife NYC. I love this ad that they did, and it's a really great resource. So if you haven't already checked it out, I did put it in the chat. nyc.gov/wildlife is really has a wealth of information on raccoons, but I think there's about 11 different species that have pages. There are lots of information about facts about them, and also ways to coexist and how to handle them in a humane way, and not, as Jen said, have to call us or wonder what to do. So it's definitely.
You won't have to kick over your trash can if you have a secured trash can.
Exactly.
It's bungee cords, put a cinder block on top, because it's a buffet. That's all it is. Like, all your scraps are a big buffet at like 7 o'clock. Like,
exactly. No, thanks for pointing
secure your trash cans.
So we're talking about how we normally, mostly we're going to leave wildlife alone. But when it comes to birds, I mean, sometimes I've been in this situation. There's an injured animal, an injured bird, and we can help, right? I mean, that's as opposed to make a call if we see them. So let me turn it over again to Dr. Nelson for birds.
Yeah, with birds, it can be a little bit tricky because they do fledge a little bit young and stupid. And I say this as a complete bird lover, so with total love and respect. Um, they basically, the first step they take out of the nest, they're like, oh, whoa, I didn't actually mean to do that. And now I'm on the ground and I don't know where to go. And it's kind of like when your teens or tweens are going to the mall the first time and you're like, okay, take a parent's phone number, go with a friend, like you make sure they're safe, but like you send them. And part of you is like, is this a good idea? But most of you is like, no, 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 this is what they're supposed to do. And then when the adults are walking around the mall and you look over and you're like, those kids are just being dumb. They're just sitting around on the corner, like they're just doing nothing. They're not walking with purpose. They're not acting like they're shopping. They're just kind of sitting around, but they're fine. That's what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to go out in the world and figure out what it means to watch your purse and make sure it doesn't get stolen and figure out, which bus to take home. You can tell them a little bit of a free range parent within safety. So birds is the same way. Their moms are going to be following them around from a distance and feeding them and making sure that they, don't starve. But they're still out of the nest for a couple of days before they learn to fly properly. And so you might actually see them just on the ground. And then even after they learn to fly and they're totally competent teenagers or post-teens, whatever you want to call it, they will still solicit food from their parents. This is really fun to watch. I enjoy this when I'm walking home from work. If you see birds that have their wings dropped a little bit and they're like, and they have these like baby attitudes where they're still asking for food, even though they're completely capable of going and finding it themselves. So there's a big difference between a fledgling bird that is supposed to be out there, even though it looks kind of gawky and like it doesn't quite know what to do, and a nestling bird. Nestlings are not completely covered with feathers. Maybe the feathers are totally beneath the surface, or maybe they're sticking out, but like they haven't gotten fluffy yet. So the top two photos are these beautiful, super hungry birds with a giant mouths that like their heads are too big for their body. So when they, open them up, they practically fall over. These guys should not be out of the nest. They need to be nice and warm and cozy and protected and fed. The lower ones are the ones who are like, feed me, I've never been alive before, I've never been fed, I'm super hungry. And like, actually, they're doing just fine. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if you see the bottom birds, don't worry about them. Just even if you're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, they're beneath a car, tuck them maybe under the car all the way, so they're not underneath the wheel, or put them on the sidewalk, or put them in something green that looks like it's a little bit more protected. Half the time they'll fly right back out again and go sit under that car tire because, that's just where they want to be. And if you see that first set, the nestlings, those are the guys you want to help. So like I was saying earlier, you can make a fake nest and zip tie it to something that's nice and high, exactly where you found it, because chances are they're like right below the tree that they ought to be in. And mom will come and follow them, find where they are and feed them, sometimes even going back and forth between the real nest with half the bird, babies in it, and the temporary nest with the other half, until everybody is ready to fledge. What you can do is set that up and then just go inside and come back in 6 hours. Don't hang around watching from super close, because there's a good chance that if you're close enough that you can see a little baby bird, you're also close enough that mom is worried what you're going to do. And so she's not going to come back while you're standing right there. But once you go away in your house, come back 6 hours later and check on them. And if they're still, active and looking like they have been fed recently, as opposed to like, oh, I'm dying, you can trust that they're doing okay. You don't need to worry that if you touch them, mom's not going to come back. That's a myth for the most part about baby animals, that your scent will somehow deter mom. Mom's coming back for those babies. So just, do what you need to do to get them set up in the environment. And if that's not working, or if they actually do look injured in some way, if there's blood, or if they're not bright and alert and asking for food, like these guys with the giant open mouths, then if they're a little bit dull, then that might be because they're not getting fed appropriately, or they're injured. And in that case, you should take that bird and call a rehabber, like we discussed earlier, how to find a rehabber. One of our favorite rehab groups that we work with a lot is the Wild Bird Fund. And so you can contact them directly. It's actually much more efficient for the bird, because if you bring it to us, we're going to do the exam and say, yep, it should go to the Wild Bird Fund, and get, field involved to drive it over there. And so often if you call us, we'll just tell you, like, great, good job picking it up. Please go ahead and bring it to the Wild Bird Fund. And if you can't, then, you can bring it to us and we'll send it where it needs to go. But the Wild Bird Fund, one of their main missions is education. And so it's really an amazing experience to go there and just see what the place is like, and have people talk to you about what's wrong with the bird and what the next step is. So I recommend it as a rewarding experience for yourself, not just for the bird.
All right, thank you so much. And now we're going to turn it over to Jen. Oh, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. That's why I was distracted. We're going to turn it over to Jen to talk about what to do if you suspect animal cruelty.
Hey y'all. All right. So did you want to go to the next slide real quick? So basically there's a lot of people in New York City.
Jen, I'm sorry, can you hold your mic? Because I think it's a little hard sometimes to hear you.
So sorry. I forgot.
No, that's great. Thank you.
There's a lot of animals in New York City. There's a lot of people in New York City. And I've worked in a lot of different jurisdictions and states. And what I've found in New York City is that, it is very expensive to be here. And it is very expensive to have anything, whether it be yourself, a child, a dog, a cat. Veterinary care is extremely expensive. And these are all things that we have to take into consideration when we think about animal cruelty and neglect. Because sometimes people can't afford to get the proper veterinary care, and some people want to, and that's why we have resources here. People come here and they're like, hey, like, I have my dog, I can't groom it. What do I do? It looks horrendous, and it might be the worst thing I've ever seen, but we shave it down and the dog is fat and happy and has no wounds. It just really needed a haircut. So we have different like symptoms listed here that, like, you might think to be abuse, but all these things are interpretive. So animal cruelty occurs when somebody intentionally injures or harms an animal, or willfully deprives them of food or sustenance, or medical care. So things that you'll typically see are wounds on the body. If an animal has an untreated wound, if it has like a slash on it, or it has like an open tumor that's weeping on it. These are things that we see on the regular come through our doors for various reasons. If it's missing hair, if it looks mangy, if you're familiar with that term, if the dog looks crusty and dry and smells really weird and yeasty, if they're thin, if they're emaciated, if they have some sort of extreme limp. Obviously, if you've seen someone beat an animal, that is abuse. That's intentionally hurting an animal. Dogs who may be neglected, that are left without food or water or chained up. You might sometimes, with that, it's a little tricky. Sometimes you might not never like see anybody walking their dog or feeding their dog or watering their dog, and it's just always chained up every time you see it. But if the animal is of a healthy weight and it has a proper shelter and everything, a lot of times there's nothing wrong with that. We get a lot of complaints about junkyard dogs. In New York City, we have a lot of car lots, we have a lot of junkyards, and a lot of those properties have a lot of, like, big dogs walking around to just scare people off. Just, they bark, that's all they do. And they're pleasantly taken care of, and it's really like their day job. They go home on the weekends when the owner goes home. But there's often nothing wrong with them. We receive a lot of complaints about that, and that's the dog's job. It's a working dog. I personally have Yorkies, and my Yorkies, their working job is just to be cute. If you've seen an animal that's hit by a car or has anything that looks like it's like lacking veterinary care, obviously that's neglect. And what we see a lot here, it's all interpretive. I can see, like, let's say for age ranges, I can have a 14-year-old dog come in that is patchy, emaciated, has wounds on its body, and they have a vet record a mile long, but they come in looking horrible. And our vet services will flag it to me and say, hey, this looks like a cruelty case. I'll look into it further. And these people have taken care of this 14-year-old animal all 14 years of its life. And it's just at the end of its days, and they have to make that call that, there's nothing more we can do to keep this animal comfortable. But if a 2-year-old dog came in and it's completely emaciated and it's missing a bunch of hair and it's got pussy wounds or different things, going on with it, like that's a 2-year-old animal that likely doesn't have anything wrong with it other than just lack of medical care. And we see that come through on a regular basis. I'm sure Dr. Nelson would agree, especially in Manhattan for some reason. We see a lot of animals come through, and it's simply just they're not being fed. And so if you see something that's completely emaciated, meaning that this dog is skin and bones, or this cat is skin and bones, like they can barely, you don't even know how they're standing, that is something to really be alarmed about. Um, some things that also that aren't cruelty are sound complaints. I know we talked about this prior, when Alex, if you want to chime in, was asking different questions about these things. Sometimes, we were talking about behavior. People think the dog sounds like it's dying. Your neighbor has a husky and it's screaming all day, talking all day, and it just has anxiety. Nothing's wrong with it. It's just making a whole lot of ruckus because it's like, mommy, where are you? But there's nothing wrong with it. So that's a sound complaint. That's not cruelty. The police will go and say he looks fluffy and happy. But if you see somebody that is hurting an animal, that's reason to call 911. That's reason to contact the police. If you see something that really just doesn't look right, somebody walks outside with their dog and it looks emaciated, and that dog is only, a few years old or something, like that's a reason to have concern. Or if something just doesn't feel right, we always just encourage people to, give a call, and it's better to ask than to not say anything at all, because you never know until you really, you bring somebody like NYPD into it to investigate. Um, but yeah, under the New York law, uh, it's obviously illegal for animal fighting. It's illegal to intentionally hurt something, causing it extreme pain, to intentionally deprive it of food and water, and failure to provide adequate shelter or the necessary veterinary care. So we also see, um, not publicly, obviously, it's usually investigated, but we see dog fighting and cockfighting still in New York City. I know recently they busted several different dog fighting related issues, and this is still a prevalent thing that's going on. So if you have something that's going on in your neighborhood where you see chickens that are of unusual nature, whether they're shaved down, or you see different like weird bird boxes with chickens in a box or something outside, or they're tied by their feet, or if you see dogs that have a lot of scarring all over the front of their body, that's something to be suspect and call 311 or 911, or give Crime Stoppers a tip and say like, hey, I'm kind of concerned, this is unusual, what I saw in my neighborhood. But what ACC does is that we don't have enforcement powers, but anything that comes through our doors, we will, like Dr. Nelson, will do an evaluation of each and every single animal that comes through our door. And if the animal has some sort of, something, one of those symptoms on that list that's suspect, then they will flag it. They'll ask me to review it. I look into it further. I then, speak with the NYPD detective squad that investigates the animal cruelty matters, and we confer about the case and decide whether or not this is something that needs to be pursued. And we also work with the ASPCA, who assists NYPD with their cases, because the ASPCA, once NYPD takes an animal on as a case, we transfer our animals over to the A, and they care and help NYPD with their further investigations. So even though ACC doesn't have enforcement powers, we have a huge effect and help with the city. And since I started here, we've had triple the amount of cases that have gone through and been prosecuted and gone further, and animals that have, just received justice that they wouldn't have received. So that's ACC has to be the voice for the voiceless. We're all of us in every way. We're all helping animals in some way because they can't speak for themselves. Sarah's speaking for the cats. They can't speak for themselves out on the streets. And we're all here. We all have a voice, and we're all here to help them. So sometimes it's harder than others to put together the pieces of the story, but when they come through our doors, we do everything possible to help them and give them a better shot at life. So if you guys have any suspects, issues going on in your neighborhood, you're more than welcome to hit up the question box, and I'm more than willing to give some free advice on this matter because like I said, I have many years of working in law enforcement with animal cruelty investigations. But if you have an issue, call 311. If it's actively happening, call 911 or call Crime Stoppers and, give a tip because, if you don't say anything, there's nothing, the animals can't say anything. So that's what I got.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. And I know I think it's about 7 now. So I hope if the panelists could stay a few more minutes, I think that'd be great. But if anyone has to go, and I understand if attendees have to leave, we are going to have this available as a recording, but we just have a little bit left, and then hopefully we can get to a couple of questions. The last subtopic of tonight is how you can help and how you can be a good neighbor to animals at the shelter. And it's just one slide, easy. If you can support us in any way, it really goes a long way. So whether it's adopting, we have all these wonderful animals available for adoption. Whether it's fostering, temporarily caring for an animal, that's a really great way to help us out, and you're helping your fellow New Yorkers. We are all, I think, gearing up for what's going to happen as evictions come, getting a little nervous about that. So fostering, I think, is going to play a big role in that. Donating, we always welcome and very much appreciate financial donations. We have various funds you can donate to, as well as in-kind donations. We can always use dog treats, for example, at our shelters. We do a lot of training for the dogs in our care, and dog treats are used constantly. So if you wanted to drop those off, that would be great. We have a whole wish list if you wanted to look at that. And then spreading the word. I mean, just by coming tonight, obviously, these are people who are invested if you're here tonight, and you can help spread the word and spread all of what we talked about tonight and how people can help. That would be great. Early on, I mentioned, that we do have resources available for people. That's another great way to spread the word that we have resources. And on September 29th, we're actually going to have an entire webinar devoted to our surrender prevention and community pets programs. So we're going to have a whole webinar talking about how ACC helps people keep their pets and provide resources to them. So if you know anyone who might be interested, if you're interested yourself, please register for that webinar. We're going to go into a lot more detail about the resources that are available for people and their pets. And I think on this, we have a lot of pictures of adopted animals. We also have a Girl Scout troop picture here supporting ACC. It doesn't matter how old you are, kids can get involved. We really appreciate any kids that help raise awareness and make toys for us as they did here. So everybody can help. And I think as we all know, especially after seeing this, everybody can be a good animal neighbor. We can all do something to help the animals in our care. Sometimes that may be leaving animals where they are. Maybe that's the best thing to do. So I think we're up to just helpful links. I wanted to share this screen. I put some links in the chat, but these are a couple of the groups and resources that we mentioned that I recommend you go to, or maybe bookmark, refer. They're very helpful. And I can leave that up for a minute. And then questions. So if anybody has questions, we're going to look at the Q&A box. Let me see if there are any that we did not answer. And panelists, some of these may be more appropriate for certain panelists than others. Let me see. All right, so we did get the question, are the resource pages, we mentioned the behavior flyers, available for download on the website? They are. I put the link in the Q&A box. You can access those under our services tab and share with anyone. Let's see. Do we check microchips? Does anyone know? I don't know the top off the top of my head, but oh, sorry, I just lost this. Is it possible to check a microchip from another country? So if someone has a pet from outside of the US and they're here, are we able?
Yeah, we have like I think every shelter can do that. You scan it and you can I had two cane corsos that came from Bulgaria.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, as long as they're microchipped, there is a will and a way to find out where they came from.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Let's see. And now do we even, I was wondering what you guys think. If you find a dog or cat after hours, maybe it's late at night or it's over a weekend, and can't bring it home to keep it until the next business day, do you have any advice? And it might be, I don't know if it's different for dogs or cats, but this person says, I tried 311 late at night regarding a kitten or a small cat. They had no advice beyond wait until the shelters reopen. And before we get into that, I will say we are open on weekends. So ACC does have operations 7 days a week. So it doesn't matter if it's Saturday or Sunday, we always have staff working. It is advised to call ahead just to make sure, especially now with hours being a little different. But weekend business day does not affect the ACC world.
But also, Manhattan is open 24 hours. That's our only center that's open 24 hours. So if something absolutely had to be brought in after hours, that's where it would need to be taken to. But if it's like a kitten, I'm sure Sarah can chime in. It's probably good where it's at, and that's not an emergency. That's not something I'm going to dispatch a field officer to go out and pick up.
So I think that's one of those situations where it really depends on what's going on. Like, be sure to age the kitten, because often people say kitten and they're talking about a 6-month-old cat. So cats can give birth at 4 months. So I don't really call those kittens anymore, even though I know some people do. So if it can have kittens of its own, it's a cat. If it's not an emergency, then I would leave that cat there. And then you can revisit in the morning and talk to someone. If it's a neonatal kitten, like under 2 weeks old, can't regulate its own body heat, you can either do what Jen said, bring it to the Manhattan shelter if you're sure you're not kidnapping it, or you can also try an emergency room. Like any veterinary hospital has any vet emergency hospital, Blue Pearl, Veg. If it's a stray, they usually will allow you to do a Good Samaritan intake. And that goes for any kind of animal. If you find a dog that's been hit in the street, it's not your dog, you can bring it to an emergency room if you can't get to us, because sometimes those are closer, and you can do a Good Samaritan surrender.
Okay, thank you. So with the winter months approaching, what's the best way to help dogs that have been chained up and left out in the cold?
Well, I think that you need to evaluate like what is their like dog box situation, or do they have that? Because you can't leave an animal out in temperatures that's going to harm them, whether it be too hot or too cold. So if it is too cold for them to be outside, that's something to make a phone call about and be like, hey, like NYPD needs to go out there, check on the welfare of this animal. It's too cold outside, or it's too hot, it doesn't have any shelter, it's sitting out in the heat and everything. But also the ASPCA does a lot of outdoor dog community engagement. They provide dog boxes, they'll go out and help the owner to assess the situation and provide proper shelter, because it's not illegal to have a dog outside as long as you have the proper shelter that is the proper space and has the proper bedding that's going to stay dry and keep them warm from the elements. So I know Alex posted the helpful links. The ASPCA has a lot of great outdoor dog community engagement things that they do.
Yeah, and that's interesting you brought up the A, because we had another question. How are you different from the ASPCA? Which is a great question. It's a common question. And there are several ways. One is that we are essentially New York City's municipal shelter. Again, we are a nonprofit, but we serve as the city shelter. So we're the only open admissions animal welfare organization taking in all of the animals that come through our doors. ASPCA is a wonderful partner of ours. We work with them on a lot of different fronts, and they're fantastic, but it's a national organization. They do have a New York City shelter, but they are also a national advocacy organization as well. They do a lot of things. As Jen mentioned, they also help with investigations of cruelty, but as it is now in the city, the NYPD really leads those investigations. So hopefully that answers your question. Let me see. We have a few more. I don't know if people can stay on. We might have to end soon. If we don't get to any of your questions, please do email community outreach. I think we can take a couple more. Let's see. Can a person report abuse or neglect anonymously?
Yes. Just like you can report anything else, like your neighbor throwing a party, you can report anonymously, so just give the information, say I want to remain anonymous, and that's that. You might not get called back or find out the outcome, obviously, if you remain anonymous, but you can definitely call and report it anonymously.
Okay, thank you. All right, and okay, we have a question. I know this is true because I've done it myself. Does Wild Bird also take pigeon cases?
Yes, they do. Wild Bird Fund takes lots of pigeons. Pigeons, unlike songbirds, have babies all year round. So sometimes that happens when people are taking down or putting up scaffolding and a nest gets disturbed. But also adult pigeons who are sick or injured can be taken all year round. Sometimes in the middle of the summer when it gets very, very, very busy and they get very full of songbirds, which are actually native species and protected species, unlike pigeons, which are actually not protected. Sometimes Wildlife Fund will post signs in the door saying you're temporarily not taking pigeons and starlings and sparrows. And in those cases, they'll usually work with you to figure out what the next best step is.
Okay, thank you. Now, do you guys, I don't know if the panelists can see the questions and see if I missed any.
The last one that just came in?
Yeah, we have an issue with members of the public trapping and relocating wildlife like possums or raccoons to park sanctuaries, etc. Isn't it illegal to remove wildlife in New York City unless you're a licensed trapper or rehabber? NYPD seems to have no awareness of the laws. That is a really unfortunate situation when it occurs, and I know that Snow can talk more about the last part with the NYPD, but I can say that it's absolutely illegal to trap and remove or relocate wildlife in New York City. It's actually illegal to possess wildlife as well, unless you're a rehabber. So just linking on to what I was saying a couple minutes ago about pigeons, pigeons are not migratory songbirds, and so and they're not actually a protected species in New York. So you can actually own a pigeon. I'm not recommending that you take a pigeon home and make it your pet because they are wild animals and they don't really want to live in your house, but it wouldn't be illegal. On the other hand, it would be illegal to possess, keep at your home for a long period of time, something like a cardinal or some kind of a finch or a gull or any other large bird. And I know Snow wants to talk lots about the mammal side of that.
Well, it's just, I'm not like defending that they don't know the laws, but it's not really something that they enforce. So in different jurisdictions and different places, everybody's got a different enforcer for everything. And here, that really would fall more under DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. So they are a different set of officers that you're not going to see unless you call them for an issue like this. They're not on the streets like NYPD all over the place. They're a specialized unit that is completely separate from NYPD, and they handle all the environmental issues and with wildlife and stuff like that. So if you're having an issue with somebody doing that, like I know somebody a while ago in Howard Beach, some sort of raccoon trapper was going to that area in Howard Beach and just releasing all his raccoons that he trapped so he didn't have to, put them down or anything like that. And that was not okay. So you can't just do that. So yeah, definitely go look up DEC, call them and talk to them about it, and they can help you with whatever issue you got.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I'll go back to I think I can do this correctly. Whoops, I keep doing the wrong slides. Okay, we have DEC, and that there's a direct link there to the wildlife rehabbers, but you can also check out just dec.ny.gov for some helpful information.
There's a
And-
question about the Queens and the Bronx receiving centers. The Bronx Receiving Center will be reopening with limited hours later this month. Queens, I believe, is not scheduled to reopen at this time.
Yes, thank you for catching that. So I should have said this in the beginning, we do have 5 locations here in New York City, but with the pandemic, our operations have changed a bit. So we have not stopped working. We've been taking animals in and adopting them out this whole time. But yes, Queens and Bronx are not yet open. Let me see.
There's also one about, are we accepting new foster parents?
We are. Yes. When we first went into quarantine and back in March, we did a big plea for fosters, and the response was amazing. It was really wonderful. So many people wanted to help out, and we actually had to play catch up on applications. At the current time, if you go to our website, you'll see you can fill out a foster questionnaire, let us know that you're interested in fostering, and we're going to reach out soon about upcoming orientations that will be online, so you don't have to come in person. And we would love especially large dog fosters and adult cat fosters. A lot of times I know people, it's hard because a lot of people want small dogs, but we really have more of a need for people who can take, whether it's fostering or adopting large dogs. We get them all, but the small dogs get snapped up quickly. But yeah, if you can foster, please check out our website, nycacc.org/foster. And we would love to have you take an animal home. It's a great way to be a
We have an Instagram feed that you guys can all follow, and we post animals looking for foster and happy tales about the foster animals. And
yeah, that's great. And ACC itself has, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow us. So as you see, it's our handle, NYCACC. I think if we got most of them, and it's, what time? Oh, it is 7:15. Thank you, everybody, for taking the extra time. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, attendees, for staying. And thank you again so much for joining us, because I think obviously this was a topic that a lot of people had questions about. And again, we can, I'm sure, go into a lot more detail about many of the things we brought up. If we did not get to a question that you asked and we missed it, or if you think of something else, please email us at communityoutreach@nycacc.org. We will get back to you. And this recording will be available soon. We are recording this. So if you want to check out in a few days the nycacc.org/webinars page, we're going to link to it there on our YouTube channel. And yeah, I mean, before I sign off, I don't know, panelists, do you have any last words, anything to say about being a good animal neighbor here in New York? Silence, crickets. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you to our panelists, and everybody stay safe, you and your pets and all our fellow animals in New York. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.